immediately move into the inaugural session of the Quad Café. Let me talk a bit about the Quad Café, where I'll have various co-hosts with me. We'll have Arpit Chaturvedi, we'll have a video bite from Dr. Melissa from Australia, and we'll have Dr. Nagao, an expert on the Indo-Pacific, give us a brief presentation on the security architecture. So we'll have a half an hour, an action-packed half an hour in the Quad Café. The key point for all the people attendees, right, is that the Quad Café will be a fortnightly edition that we will continue as we move forward in the GPI QUAD Forum journey, and in its quest to kickstart public diplomacy around the Quad and become a repository and a knowledge base of everything Quad. Okay, so with that spirit in mind, I would like to invite my co-host Arpit to the chat. Arpit, are you there?
I'm here, Shashank. Thank you so much, and so good to be on the Quad Café today.
Lovely. Arpit, besides being a dear friend, is someone who wears many hats. Being a Cornell graduate is the least of his achievements. He established think tanks like the GPI. He is a lecturer at many international forums as well as institutions, widely published and widely acclaimed. I warmly welcome my friend Arpit Chaturvedi for the first half of the Quad Café, and I look forward to grilling him with some very provocative questions, right? And let me tell all the people listening that he's not had any advanced warning, right? So whatever you see, right, is raw questions, okay? So,
yep.
Arpit, I'd like to kickstart, right, our discussion by something which I read very recently in the Economic and Political Weekly. There was an article, right? And the key point for all the people attendees, right, is that the Quad Café will be a fortnightly edition that we will continue as we move forward in the GPI QUAD Forum journey, and in its quest to kickstart public diplomacy around the Quad and become a repository and a knowledge base of everything Quad. Okay, so with that spirit in mind, I would like to invite my co-host Arpit to the chat. Arpit, are you there?
I'm here, Shashank. Thank you so much, and so good to be on the Quad Café today.
Lovely. Arpit, besides being a dear friend, is someone who wears many hats. Being a Cornell graduate is the least of his achievements. He established think tanks like the GPI. He is a lecturer at many international forums as well as institutions, widely published and widely acclaimed. I warmly welcome my friend Arpit Chaturvedi for the first half of the Quad Café, and I look forward to grilling him with some very provocative questions, right? And let me tell all the people listening that he's not had any advanced warning, right? So whatever you see, right, is raw questions, okay? So,
yep.
Arpit, I'd like to kickstart, right, our discussion by something which I read very recently in the Economic and Political Weekly. There was an article, right? And the article was titled, The Age of Empires. Is the age of empires back? Given what we are seeing, right, Russia try and achieve, right? Russia, meaning President Putin, is referring to the long golden, supposedly, history of the Russian Empire and how he's trying to reenact the same. And then we have a China, right, whose defense minister openly says we can go to war, right? And we'll fight till the very end. So, all in all, it all points to that is the days of the great game, empires. Is it back, or is the multipolar global world order, the global governance structure that was put forth after the Second World War, is it crumbling to pieces? What are your views on that?
That is a great question, Shashank, and a great way to start the Quad Café, because I think the article that you mentioned is quite appropriately titled. I mean, obviously, it reminds me of the E.J. Hobsbawm book called Age of Empires, but also, reminds me of a very similar paper written not right now, but about half a decade ago by oh, a professor of mine and a professor of yours. So Ravi Abdulal from Harvard and Jonathan Kirshner from Cornell, where they talk about, is globalization dead? And I think that what we are seeing right now is the crisis of globalization. When we look at, and what they again discuss in that particular paper is that, hey, globalization may be dying for sure, and by what we mean by globalization is, the rules, the orders on which, the fundamental principles on which the global system is based. Okay, so in many ways, the rule of law, humanitarianism, etc., etc. All of those institutions and underlying rules are, in some way or the other, if not dying, then getting grievously outdated. Uh, and what the way that I see Quad, or the way that I see, some of these other little pockets of groupings or of efforts trying to keep a rule-based order alive. I mean, EU coupled with NATO is obviously, the biggest example over there. But I see that these are efforts to keep globalization alive, and the spirit of globalization, which comes with a rule-based order, peace, trade, etc., alive. But there is, no denying that indeed internationalization is not dead. We have so many people interacting with each other right now. Indeed, there's now probably greater diaspora engagements, greater, just interactions between countries now, as opposed to the Second World War, period. But if you talk about globalization, certainly, I won't say it's dead, but it's not alive and kicking either.
Yeah, it's definitely under a lot of stress. We may put it like that. When the discussions were going on, Arpit, over the past hour or so, right? We heard experts, right? We heard Dr. Zach Cooper say that Quad is probably trying to do too much, if I can paraphrase him, right? It's trying to do technology, it's trying to do economy, it's trying to do global governance, it's trying to do security. Wherein he felt that probably the focus should be on security. Ambassador Prakash, right, in his opening address, also mentioned that probably, right, there has been a divergence from the core focus area of security. On the other hand, in the youth leaders panel, right, if you noticed, a strong view came across from Amya, from Travis, right? There are many people, right, who feel, right, that a strong focus on security with a focus on China, right? To quote Travis, right, he said that we should not try to contain, but we should try to engage, right? Amya was talking about that this is an old world phenomenon, trying to contain someone or having focus only on security per se, right? According to the young leaders, Travis and Amya, that is passe, right? According to the diplomats, right, that we have, that is something that the Quad should focus on. What do you think? The push and pull, and is there a generational thing at play here?
Well, I'm not sure about the generational thing. While that may be a case, my understanding of this would be slightly more different. See, the point over here that nobody should be denying is that the fundamental underlying aim of Quad is to contain China. Like, Quad could do hundreds and thousands of other things, but if the focus is not on China, the focus is not on containing China, then Quad does not really make sense. Now, having said that, there is a little bit of a nuance to it. The question arises, how do we want to contain China? Is it just, from a traditionalist perspective, old school realist IR, where four countries get together and they say that, okay, we are going to join our forces, literally become, a band of brothers or whatever to contain a particular nation? Or are we going to regionalize? Are we going to create conceptually an Indo-Pacific region to contain China? Now, if we are taking the band of brothers route, then it should be just security, nothing else. Okay. If we are taking the route of regionalization of the Indo-Pacific, and thereby, and this regionalization leads to a rule-based order over here, and from that pathway contain China, especially geographically in the South China Sea, not let it expand over there, and just generally in the Indo-Pacific. If we are taking the regionalizational view, then we need to look at increasing trade. We need to look at partnerships on technology. We need to look at partnerships on security. We need to look at greater. I think we need to look at 3 C's over there, as I've said in an earlier forum, that the first is increased contact, and that's what Karl Deutsch also talked about. The second is having a common goal, and I think the common goal is pretty clear, containing China over here, and we should not shy away from verbalizing it. If not, on the track 1 forums, but at least in the track 1.5 and 2 forums, should be pretty out there and clear. And the third one, obviously, is having a common identity. And I think that regionalization and creating a we feeling, as Karl Deutsch and a lot of the regional research experts have also talked about. I don't think that Quad is doing a great job in creating a we feeling as of now, but that should certainly be a focus area.
Yeah, even I would agree, and meaning, yes, there are two competing lines, schools of thought, right? About which way should Quad evolve, right? And I think this is a work in progress, even for our policymakers, even for our diplomats, and we'll keep discussing this further. Meanwhile, right, while we Indians are good at discussing, right? The argumentative Indian is written all about that.
Absolutely.
There are things that are happening like the AUKUS, right? And our questions also, and I felt in our entire discussion till now, that is the elephant in the room, right? It came in our questions, it came in briefly in various mentions, right?
But actually, on AUKUS, I was really curious to know about your views, because I know that you hold some really nuanced and might I add strong views on what's happening over there. So, what do you think?
I used to provoke, right? And I think, right, and pardon my views on this, I think, right, that probably US is trying to hedge, right? And the entire Anglo-Saxon nature, right, of AUKUS, right, wherein it is a white grouping, right? Yeah. It is a grouping, right, of nations, right, which excludes everybody in Asia, right?
Are you trying to say that US is trying to hedge the risks that come from a Quad? It might work, it may not, by bringing up AUKUS?
Yeah, I believe, right, that there was at one point in time, and a couple of questions came on, wherein there was this whole thing, right, about Quad Plus, right? We were thinking about France, we were thinking about England, right, the big maritime powers, right? And then suddenly, right, post the Ukrainian conflict as it has emerged, right, in parallel, suddenly, right, or at least I did not see it coming, right? We may have been blindsided. Although I am an IR enthusiast, I did not see AUKUS suddenly, right, come up on the geopolitical stage. And interestingly, it is a very Anglo-Saxon concept, wherein we have England, we have Australia, and we have the US. It kicks out even Japan, right? So absolutely. I'm like a little bit flabbergasted with that, and I feel that it's a kind of hedge of close buddies, right? Meaning the
additional,
yeah. Meaning I don't want to say more.
No, I mean that's one perspective of looking at it, and the other perspective is that the country which has the most to lose with what's happening in the Indo-Pacific is the United States, and they are creating as many webs of influence as they can. And in saying that, you're probably right that AUKUS is probably the more traditional, the more reliable sort of a web for the US. And Quad is sort of the more eclectic, the more experimental sort of a web. And if you frankly ask me, I would place my bets on Quad because if you really think that who are the countries who really have the proximity and the sort of security threat from China, it's probably not Australia to that level. It's probably not New Zealand to that level. It's not UK to that great level. It's India and Japan. So, the most, enthusiastic supporters you'd find are going to be the governments of Japan and India. So I would place my bets on Quad.
Lovely. And before I know that we have to do other segments, right? The summary of it, that it might not be, right? And I'm a PhD in economics, right? So I have to bring in economics. It may not be the white man's burden, right, alone, right, to secure the Indo-Pacific and multipolar world order, right, is something that that we may want to very provocatively put out there just to spark discussion. And to kind of, Arpit, just kind of lay out the theme for the next Quad Café, something very interesting. What is wrong in aligning with China? Because very recently China said, right, that if India and China come together, the world is ours. What is wrong with that? Right?
That'll be a great discussion, Shashank. It warrants a whole episode in itself. So I'm looking forward to that.
We'll dig into that into our next Quad Café discussion.
Sure.
Now, I'd like to actually, Arpit, invite Bilal to play a small video message from another friend of ours from Australia, Melissa, who couldn't be here, but has so graciously sent across her video pertaining to her views on the current situation in the Indo-Pacific. Bilal, if I could ask you to please play that video.
Melissa Conley Tyler from the Asia Pacific Development Diplomacy and Defence Dialogue, and it's a great pleasure to be joining you tonight for this Global Policy Insights Forum on the Quad. I'm sorry that I'm joining you with a recorded message. It's not an awake time here in Australia. And I acknowledge that I'm speaking from the lands of the Anawan people and pay respects to elders past and present. Now, I've been asked to speak a little on the evolving security situation in Indo-Pacific, a little bit on the strategic relevance of the Quad, and then looking ahead, what is the future of the Quad? And I think they're all very linked. So if I'm going to talk about the evolving security situation, a good example would be that this week, with a newly elected government, our new Minister for Defence revealed that there was a dangerous incident in the South China Sea between an Australian aircraft and a Chinese fighter. That to me looks a lot like what we're going to see in the strategic situation in the region. We're going to have tensions, we're going to have grey zone, and it's all going to bubble along and possibly not reach a head. And that looks like what the strategic relevance of the Quad is like for me. In deference to the Quad structure, I'm going to say 4 things I think are important to keep in mind when you're thinking about the strategic relevance of the Quad. First, yes, it is all about China. That is what has made this strategic diamond come together. But secondly, I'd say it's also all about India. So the other 3 partners of the diamond all have existing relationships and trilateral cooperation. So this weekend, for example, there's a defence ministers trilateral meeting. The Quad for me is about those 3 drawing India into what our old Prime Minister used to call webs of alignment, trying to get them into the same strategic place. And that brings me to my 3rd point, which is I don't think there is a common vision between the 4, much as they would like to say so. I was in India recently for the Raisina Dialogue, and session after session, it was very clear that there's a big difference between the views of the US and Europe, for example, and India on something like Ukraine. And I think we're pushing it too far if we think that there is an overall common vision that is, for example, support of US primacy, liberal international order, a lot of things that India probably wouldn't sign up for. That means, for my fourth point, that I think the Quad works where strategic interests align, where there's something that is in all four countries' national interest to do, and they decide that they're going to work together. But I think in some ways there'll always be a little bit of that sense of unrequited love, that the other three see the world much more similarly than India does through, history, strategic circumstance, etc. And so it'll always be finding where are the things we can cooperate on. And that leads me to looking at the future of the Quad. I was asked to look at, trade, diplomacy, culture, collective security. What is the future of the Quad? For me, if I would put in a sentence, it's about doing lots of little stuff, not one big thing. Finding areas where there are common interests and think we can contribute and decide that we want to work together. That means that expectations on the Quad should be realistic. Does of course raise the question as well as how much impact it's going to have, because it's a very crowded space in many of the areas. So if I look at the last Quad leaders meeting, for example, in Tokyo, the fourth of the leaders meeting, what came out of it? The headline is the Quad is a force for good, committed to bringing tangible benefits to the region. Well, what were those benefits? So you see more on vaccines, very important. Infrastructure, there's now a Quad debt management resource portal. You see climate coming through, so you've got QCHAM, the Quad Climate Change Adaptation Mitigation Package, looking at green shipping, hydrogen, ammonia, etc. You've got a Quad cybersecurity partnership and cooperation on critical technology supply chains. You've got a Quad satellite data portal, which I think is particularly helpful on the illegal fishing side, which is an important issue for the region. You've got a Quad partnership on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And you've got the Quad Fellowship, which will bring a grand total of 100 STEM graduates to the US to study. So for me, that's doing useful stuff, lots of useful stuff and small stuff, while I would say building habits of cooperation for the future. So I don't think that's anywhere near collective security, common vision, but it is useful in building up those habits of cooperation that help to build that longer term alignment. And with that, with the idea of not putting too much on the Quad's agenda, understanding what it can do and can't do and be realistic, I hand over to the other speakers who are able to be with you in real time today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Bilal, for playing that video for us. And although Melissa is not here, I would like to extend my thanks for her graciousness in sending across the video. Now, one more time, I would like to invite Dr. Nagao, who is a non-resident fellow at the Hudson Institute. His primary area of interest, as I've told before, is around the Indo-Pacific. He holds various research positions, including director at the International Security Industry Council. He is a senior research fellow at the Japan Forum for Strategic Studies. He is a specially appointed research fellow at the Japan Forum on International Relations. He is a research fellow at the Institute for Future Engineering. He's a lecturer at Gakushin University, as well as a senior fellow at the Institute of National Security Studies in Sri Lanka, a senior research fellow at the Indian Military Review, and visiting fellow and honorary convener at the Japan of Silotoma Foundation in India. As I mentioned, widely published, widely acclaimed, I hereby invite my dear friend, Dr. Nagao, to share his views on the emerging security architecture in the Indo-Pacific. Dr. Nagao, over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, now is my turn. Okay, I will use the PowerPoint and explain about the QUAD. QUAD. Oh, wait. This one. There is no problem related with the sound in this case. Okay, the title of my presentation is "We Need QUAD. Why?" That's my question, and everyone's question indeed. So indeed, Japan was a pioneer to creating this concept, both QUAD and Indo-Pacific indeed. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's speech to the Indian Parliament in 2007, entitled Conference of Two Seas, introduced this idea, both QUAD and Indo-Pacific. Indeed, when we checked this address, we cannot find the word, exact word, QUAD and Indo-Pacific. But when we check the content, all of the idea itself is included in this. So that's why this is the pioneer. So, what is significance for Japan? What is significant for Japan? QUAD is very important for Japan because rapid economic development of the both Pacific side and the Indian Ocean side are increasing, emerging as an influential region in the world politics. We can remember what happened in World War I, World War II. Where is the center of the war? Europe. Where is the center? Where is important actor? European or American? So these areas are center of the world politics. But now, because of the economic development, not only this area, but also the Indo-Pacific is the center of the world politics. That is a very important fact. Secondly, rising Indo-Pacific region should not be the China-dominated region. That's very important. That's why QUAD is needed. QUAD and Indo-Pacific is one set. Why? Because QUAD is a group, include all great powers in the Indo-Pacific except China. So QUAD and Indo-Pacific is well related in this case. And to cooperate with India, Japan needs a security architecture of the QUAD. Indeed, we can check how different between Asia Pacific and Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific include India. Asia Pacific did not. QUAD is a group of the three US allies, US and US allies, and India. So India is only newcomer. That's why we need the QUAD. That's why we need the Indo-Pacific. India is needed. That's why Japan relation is like that. So we need to remember the questions. Why we need this? I will check more detail. Indeed, why Japan start to say this is very important? Look at this map. China is escalating the situation around Japan, Taiwan. You can see the naval route of the Chinese warship landing around Japan, circling. Look at this. The number of Chinese vessels identified within the contiguous zone in the water surrounding the Senkaku Island of Japan. Yes, 2011, just 12, 2019, more than 1,000. Look at this. Indeed, this is not a problem only for Japan. This is a problem for India. Number of China's incursion in the Indo-China border area. Yes, 2011 to nearly 200, but 2019, 663, escalated. So I combined 1 and 2. Wow, we share the same problem. India and Japan share the same problem. Maybe there's a possibility that in the South China Sea, same thing has happened. In the other area, same things has happened. Recently, we are checking what happened in the South Pacific. This is the background situation. China escalates their military activities. So how does the QUAD work to deal with China? There is 3 features in the China's territorial expansion. First one, lack of respect to international law. Before 1970s, China hasn't claimed Senkaku Island as their territory. But in 1970s, different. The potential existence of oil reserve they found. And the location is good to make pressure toward Taiwan. That's why they start to claim Senkaku Island. This means that this is not based on current international law. They change the claim along with their interest. Expansion of the territorial claims is also expansion of the territorial claim where they are power vacuums is another feature of the China's territorial expansion. Look at this map published by Ministry of Defense of Japan. When China expands their territory. Firstly, in 1950s, France withdrew from the French Indochina. They occupied half of the Paracel Island. In 1970s, when US withdrew from the South Vietnam, China occupied another half of the Paracel Island. In 1980s, when the Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam, China occupied 6 features of the Spratly Island. And in 1990s, when US withdrew from Philippines, China occupied Mischief Reef. When they find a power vacuum, they try to take it. That's the pattern. And the third is attempt economic dominance or other non-military methods to expand influence abroad, or common theme of China's exploit in the full Indo-Pacific. Non-military method is a very important part of the China's territorial expansion. Look at this. This is what happened in the Indian Ocean. China has building port, but when we check the location of the port, we can understand this is not merely economic, this is strategic. China tried to create a new route, energy import route, but do not cross the Malacca Strait. For example, you can see from Middle East, Pakistan, China can enter the Pakistan and go to China. But Xinjiang will go in this case. But from Middle East, China can go to the Myanmar to go to China. Or from Middle East, you can go to the Malay Peninsula, but do not cross the Malacca Strait. Instead of this, they cross the Malay Peninsula. Both sides, they are preparing the port and cross on the land and go to the Cambodia and go to China. They are creating alternative routes where do not dominated by United States. This is security, not economy. So how does the Quad work? Quad shoots the opposite, what China wants. Respecting rule-based order, of course, respecting. How important? We need repeatedly emphasize in the other statements, many places we can express. Maintaining military balance is another matter. Maintaining military balance, what should we do? Indeed, the current problem is China's military modernization based on the ample budget. It's a big matter. According to the CIPRI, the think tank in Sweden pointed out that from 2011 to 2020, China increased their military expenditure 76%, but the same period, US decreased 10%, decrease. So, of course, US spent 3 times bigger military expenditure than China, but yes, China is catching up. China is not the China in the past. So what should I do? This is new idea. For a long time, we depend on the US in this region. Japan-US alliance, Australia-US alliance, every time alliance with the US. But Japan and Australia do not cooperate. This means that all information go to the United States and the US will take charge. This is hub and spoke system in the past. But now, different. many bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral cooperation, including Quad, AUKUS, or everything, etc., etc. Share the security burden. This is network. Some corporations do not include the United States, but the US say this is welcome because this is network. This is sharing burden. That's a new system to deal with China. Another one is strike capability. Yes, Japan is planning to possess strike capability. This is the range of the missile, new missile Japan is planning to possess. This is Australia. Australia also planning to possess long-range strike capability. This is India's, of course, India's, but this list is a little limited, but just tested in 2020 in autumn. There is the missiles, but including hypersonic missiles, the latest in the world. Why they focusing on strike capability? You can imagine if all of the Quad countries possess the strike capability, China need to worry the many places at the same time. If China decides to attack India, but still they need to share the some military resources against Japan because Japan has a strike capability. Australia against Australia, Australia has a strike capability. US has a strike capability. That's a Quad. So if all of the Quad members possess a strike capability, it will work. So integrated military and non-military, that's another method we need to do. Look at this map. Yes. This red one is a porch China is building, but black one is not. Indeed, these are the Quad side port project. Look at Bangladesh. There's a two ports, Sonadia and Matabari. What was that? Indeed, when China suggests Sonadia port project, Japan suggests Matabari port project as a counter project, and Bangladesh surprised and but check it. And finally, they choose the Matabari port project. This is the counter China project. And so Japan is really building the port in the Bangladesh now. But when the Sri Lanka accepted Harbor to the port, there was no alternative choice. But now we can suggest alternative choice. This is counter project. Indeed, China's source of the power is ample budget. So we need to reduce their income. Military modernization depends on ample budget. Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure project depend on ample budget. Ample budget. China is rich. That's a problem. We need to deal with it. Look at this. We should not rely on the Chinese market. In this case, yes, indeed, Japan has already started to relocate factory from China to other. That's why the Japanese living in China has decreased in 2012 and 2020. 28% have already left from China. Look at this. Japanese in the United States has increased slightly, but in China decreased. Why? Because different perception. US, good, stable, safe for business, but China is not. So why we need a Quad? This is conclusion. Japan introduced the idea of the Quad, a way of prevent China from the dominating in the rising Indo-Pacific by cooperating with India. Because China's expansion follow a predictable pattern, insisting on respect for the rule-based order, maintain the military balance, and integrating military and non-military policies into its overall strategy, are essential for the Quad to achieve this goal. Now is the time for Quad to do so. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. As always, for a very insightful and detailed presentation. I surely would have to go over your slides one more time, right, to understand the implications, right? So thank you so much for that. I have invited a couple of questions from the audience. But as the audience, right, comes up with their questions, Dr. Nagao, I would like to hear your views, right, on the impact, right? Another aspect that has been kind of the background of this entire discussion is, should Quad focus primarily on security, or there are other, you've talked about various networks, right, that are blossoming, right? Do they dilute the focus of Quad on security, or do they strengthen the whole security architecture? So what are your views on that?
Okay, so what you want to say, I understand, but focusing on military, you want to say, not security, because security is a wide area. In this case, China is rich. That's a security issue.
Yes.
But only the military is not a solution. Military is needed. Military is needed. The military is a part of security in this case. And in this case, India opposed if Quad only focusing on military, because if you as a leader of China, which country will be the first target? If the Quad is enemy, India, of course, because there is a land border, easy to access to India. Sea borders, they need to cross the sea. After that, they reach the enemy, Japan. They need to go Japan beyond the sea. Australia far from China. US States is very far. In this case, first target will be India. So that is the reason India do not wish to show too strong as a military aspect of the Quad. In this case, bilaterally, India has already cooperated with the United States or Japan, but as a Quad, they do not want to show too much. So that's why military issue is very important, but some kind of low profile is a proper India thing, and other three countries respect this situation. Right. But at the same time, the military issue is important, and at the same time, China's threat is threat of money. So that's why we should not forget other aspect of the security. China investing very heavily to develop their technology. That's why they start to deploy hypersonic missiles. We should possess hypersonic missiles. Despite this, in this case, China is first runner. That's why we need to focus on the economic security or supply chain to China, or the supply chain related to the critical technology. So this is also a military issue, even if on surface this is economic issue. So security includes all of the aspects, and we should not forget it. And Quad is advancing, I think. This is integrated military and non-military.
That's a very interesting viewpoint where you've conflated that the economic aspect is not segregated from the military aspect. It is kind of both are equally important and conjoined. So that's very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Nagao. One more question, if I may put forward to you. This comes from Indranil Das. He's saying that the present pace of the Quad's development is like a long game vis-a-vis China, keeping in mind the Chinese view of its rejuvenation till 2049. So this is more of a statement rather than a question. So your views around that is this Quad should also play the long game, or it should be a kind of focus on the here and now?
So should I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, this is, of course, I can understand his the questioner's frustration. Mr. Das, the frustration. Yes, I shared with this frustration. But at the same time, indeed, the current Quad framework has just started in the 1 year ago, 1 or 2 years ago, when the first Quad summit has happened in the beginning of 2021. So only 1 year, they agree the main issue. Viewed from this situation, this pace is not so slow, indeed. But at the same time, China's development, the pace is very fast. That's true. That's why we need to accelerate our speed. That's also true. For example, when we check the AUKUS, yeah, by using this cooperation of the AUKUS, Australia will possess a nuclear submarine in 2040s. 2040s? Now 2020s. So that's why when we hear that, this is we need accelerate the speed. That's true. But at the same time, when we check the Quad Summit, yes, their effort we should respect.
Thank you.
The issues they need to deal with.
Thank you, Dr. Nagao. And it indeed was a very informative and, should I say, right, an enlightening session from your side.